Hey guys, welcome back to a brand new episode of the Politics Matters podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Jakubowski. In today's episode, we'll be focusing on one very important race this November. It's the Pennsylvania gubernatorial race. This race, it has so much at stake, and today I figured I'd talk about it and tell you all where I stand as of right now. Um, I think we're just gonna get right into it. I don't really have anything to say to start out this podcast. Actually, no, I do have something to say. If the audio quality is a little weird, I don't think it should be. I've done everything I can to make sure that it's still good. But if the audio quality is a little worse than normal, my apologies. I'm currently in the great state of Michigan right now, so I don't have my full setup. But yeah, it should be fine though. But that being said, I think we should just get into the podcast now. Pennsylvania is a state that I have always been fascinated by. I've always liked talking about its politics, and I've always liked dealing with the stake of its elections because Pennsylvania is the most important state, essentially in every election. In 2020 was the tipping point state as predicted for Joe Biden, and Biden, Pennsylvania voted to the right or to the left of Wisconsin, Arizona, and Georgia, and if Pennsylvania and those states all shifted a little bit to the right, Trump would have won the election. So Pennsylvania is a very important state. It often leads the way for Democrats, and Democrats rarely win the White House without winning Pennsylvania. Um, so this year they have like Pennsylvania has so much to watch this year. We have a toss-up House district, the 17th district. That's Connor Lamb's old district. It's a Biden plus 6 seat in suburban Pittsburgh. That's a pure toss. So I have no idea how that's going to go. We have, obviously, we'll get to watch some interesting races to see how, the Republicans are going to win Scott Perry and Brian Fitzpatrick seats, but I want to see how they trend because that's interesting long term. And we also have those two competitive seats in the northeast of the state, Pennsylvania and Pennsylvania 7, which are Matt Cartwright and Susan Wild's seat. And Matt Cartwright's got a lot of momentum right now. He's in a Trump district. Originally, I had him as an underdog, but right now he might, you can make an argument for Matt Cartwright being favored. So there is so much to watch here in Pennsylvania. I'm just so excited to get to election day so we can see these results. But statewide, we have a lot of races too to deal with, and most importantly, we have the Senate and governor races. And these races are races that have, in the past been a little, I guess, doomerish on Democrats. I haven't been super high on them. I've always had the GOP favorite of the Senate race, and I haven't changed that yet. I will say I was wrong about John Fetterman. He does know how to run a campaign. I was too harsh on him, so I do, I guess, owe John Fetterman an apology. Clearly, I've underestimated him, and I've overestimated Dr. Oz. I still have Dr. Oz favored. I'm pretty stubborn on this. I probably will have Dr. Oz favored until election day, but we don't know what will come out between now and then. So maybe we'll have Fetterman favored at some point, but. In this governor's race, I'm talking about this in the podcast today because I'm getting a little more confident in Josh Shapiro, and that's kind of what the point of this podcast will be. So if you're a Democrat or I guess someone who supports Josh Shapiro, you might enjoy this pod. You will enjoy this podcast because I'll be talking about why I think Josh Shapiro is going to win this race in this podcast. Additionally, I'll be talking a little bit about these House races because I think that they are somewhat correlated. They're not fully correlated because Pennsylvania has a lot of ticket splitting, but yeah, I think that said, we're going to get right into it. So this governor's race is I think the most important governor's race across the country. You can make an argument for Michigan, maybe Georgia, maybe Arizona, but I think it's Pennsylvania because this is the true test of can super right-wing, super conservative, election questioning Republicans win in swing states at a level as, high stakes as the gubernatorial level. And if Mastriano wins this race, that will answer the question. That'll say, yes, Republicans can win if the environment's favorable enough. So at the time of this recording, which is Tuesday or Wednesday, I don't even know what day it is. I think it's Tuesday, a poll came out. And it was Blueprint polling. This is a Democratic leaning pollster. I don't love Blueprint, but I think it's worth talking about because it's, it had some pretty interesting statistics here on the most recent update between Mastriano and Shapiro. And they also polled the Senate race, and I'll briefly mention that. But they showed Democratic leads of pretty big amounts. So, in case you missed it, they had John Fetterman beating Dr. Oz by 9.5%, and they had Josh Shapiro beating Doug Mastriano by 11.3%. Those are some pretty big leads for the Democrats, and if they hold up heading into election day, that's a very, very um, solid showing in the polls for Democrats. Now, I know you can talk to me about how polls underestimate Republican support in Pennsylvania. They did in 2016, they did in 2020. And, yeah, but the thing is, in 2020, on the RCP polling average, polls were actually pretty good in Pennsylvania. They had Biden winning by 2.1%, he won by 1.2%. So, yeah, there are these small biases towards the Democrats, and you can give the GOP a point or so, but if you're down by 12% in this governor's race, you can't just bring up, oh, well, they underestimated us by a point in 2020, so it doesn't really matter, because it does matter, and polling also has an effect on fundraising, because if you're down in the polls by so much, you might just give up. People might see this race is unwinnable, and in the RGA statement last week, they flamed Doug Mastriano. Doug Ducey said that he wasn't going to be giving any money to unwinnable races and landslides, and he basically threw Mastriano under the bus, because right now Shapiro has, I think, $13 million cash on hand. Doug Mastriano has $450,000. It's not even a race in terms of money. Josh Shapiro will be propped up by the Democrats every step of the way, because they really like Shapiro. He's the attorney general. He knows the party. They will be willing to give him any amount of money for him to bring this race home for them. Josh Shapiro seems to be on pretty bad terms with Doug Ducey in the National Republican Governors Association, which is very, very bad for him, because he needs to catch up in funding if he wants to win this race. Look, we can talk about the red wave. We can talk about how the Republican Party is not going to be doing, or the Democratic Party is not going to be doing very well in these states come 2022. I get that. I'm not missing out on the fact that 2022 is going to be a much more Republican year than 2020. I'm aware of that. But how in God's name are you going to win a race where you are being outspent and outraised 32-1? You don't. That's not what happens. You can get outraised, you can get outspent, and you can still win races. But it's usually 4-1 or 5-1, or maybe you spend $25 million, your opponent spends $27 million. That's not that big of a difference. But if you have $450,000 to spend and your opponent is tens of millions of dollars ahead of you, buying TV ads, crisscrossing the state, traveling, having the ability to talk to more voters, reach out to more voters than you will ever dream of, you're at a disadvantage that is too big for a red wave to overcome. I'm not people saying that Mastriano is going to win because red wave. Fail to understand that in 2014, we saw the exact same thing in Pennsylvania. We had a terribly unpopular Republican incumbent governor, Tom Corbett, lose re-election by 9% to Tom Wolf. And he was an incumbent. He wasn't this wasn't some scrub who got, who had no money, who got, blitzed by this experienced incumbent senator or governor. Tom Corbett was an incumbent Republican who was propped up by the party, who lost and didn't even get 46% of the vote on election day. He was destroyed, and this was on the same day the Republicans won a generic ballot by 9%. So Pennsylvania clearly has a lot of ticket splitting going on. And look, I'm aware that 2022 is not 2014, and I've been saying that. I know 2014 less polarization, so there's more room for ticket splitting. I know, believe me. I don't think that if Mastriano will win if the environment's R+9. If you genuinely think the environment's R+9, Mastriano's favored. But I don't think the environment's be R+9, and I don't think that we're going to see this influx of money from the GOP. If Mastriano is going to catch up to Josh Shapiro in fundraising, he's going to have to do it through small donations or from other Republicans pouring money into Pennsylvania to try to help him. And the thing is, most Republicans don't seem too keen on helping Doug Mastriano, because for whatever reason, he is not well liked by the party's establishment where the money is. So he can, him and Trump seem pretty close. I'm sure when he's governor, I'm sure if he's governor, he'll do his best to please Donald Trump. But ultimately, what matters when you're running this campaign is not only getting the Trump endorsement, but also getting that funding from the national GOP. And they just threw him under the bus and called it a landslide. So I don't know where that money is going to come from, because unfortunately for Doug Mastriano, money doesn't grow on trees. And usually, pro tip, you usually don't get money right after that person called your race a landslide or a blowout. So clearly, there is a rift between Mastriano and national GOP. unless he gets a lot nicer to them a lot quicker, I don't think he'll be getting too much money. I really don't see it. And especially if the GOP have already conceded that they've lost this race, which I mean, I won't say that this race is over, but like clearly the GOP don't like where they're at in Pennsylvania governor. The Democrats are just going to keep giving money to Shapiro, and why would the GOP want to match it? They're already $12.5 million behind. Okay, they would need to give Mastriano tens of millions of dollars they could be spending on other competitive governors' races, funding their candidates they'd rather see win, not named Doug Mastriano. Like, the GOP have a lot of candidates they like this year in these governor races. Mark Marchetti, Rebecca Kleefisch, if she gets the nomination in Wisconsin, she probably won't, though, but Tim Michels is clearly more liked than Doug Mastriano. Brian Kemp, Ron DeSantis, Scott Jensen, Joe Lombardo. They have these candidates that they really like, and Mastriano's not one of them. And quite frankly, I don't know why they'd want to spend tens of billions of dollars catching up to the Democrats in Pennsylvania, but they don't need to. When if they just let Mastriano be, to say nope, we don't like you, we're going to leave you alone in Pennsylvania, focus on other races, they'd have better chances in those races, because that's where their priorities are, and that could change. I don't think it will, though, and I think no matter what happens on election day, Mastriano's going to walk into election day at a significant disadvantage in terms of money. So let's talk about Josh Shapiro now. I've talked a lot about Doug Mastriano and his fundraising and his complicated relationship with the national GOP. Let's talk about Josh Shapiro for a second. So there's been this like notion that Josh Shapiro is not a good candidate and that he's blowing the race. And like, okay, he's not good at Twitter. I know that. Like, the people who will like see Josh Shapiro's tweets and it'll be like, wow, this is so cringe. How could he tweet this? This is such a goofy tweet that no one likes. Like, okay, yeah, whoever's running Josh Shapiro's Twitter account is not good at Twitter. And yes, I have TikTok. I've seen Josh Shapiro's TikToks. They are terrible. I hate them. I really wish Josh Shapiro just didn't post on TikTok because it is awful. I've also seen Doug Mastriano's TikToks, by the way, which are like worse than Josh Shapiro's, if that's possible, because Shapiro will jokingly do a cringy trend from a month ago. Mastriano posts stuff about like he posts pictures on TikTok of like Dan Cox wins Maryland Republican nomination for governor, as if he's posting on election Twitter. And he doesn't like talk. He just posts pictures on his TikTok. So it's like he's using TikTok as an Instagram, except he's using his post he probably posts on Twitter. So Josh Shapiro and Doug Mastriano are probably running in the race of who's going to misuse social media and TikTok more. But unfortunately for the Republicans and Doug Mastriano, I don't really think that it matters, because yeah, you can be bad at Twitter, but you can also win elections. And it's ironic because the same Republicans saying that, oh, well, Josh Shapiro made a cringy tweet that it probably isn't very popular among Pennsylvania swing voters. Wow, he's going to lose now. Are also supporting Dr. Oz, who is probably the worst campaigner on Twitter I've ever seen. The dude gets ratioed on every single tweet he posts, and you are like, oh, well, it doesn't matter because it's Twitter. And like, yes, exactly, it doesn't matter. Dr. Oz is probably going to win this race, and it doesn't matter if he gets ratioed on Twitter. The same way Josh Shapiro is probably favored in Pennsylvania governor, even though his Twitter posts are extremely cringy. I'm aware of this. I know that Twitter is not real life, and so should you. You should stop acting like Twitter is real life when it benefits your candidate. So, that's enough about Josh Shapiro's Twitter. What's more important is what he actually has done and is doing now. So let's talk about the 2016 Pennsylvania Attorney General election. This is Josh Shapiro's first statewide election in Pennsylvania. Prior to that, he was the Montgomery County Commissioner. For those of you who don't know, Montgomery is a county in suburban Philadelphia. It's a Democratic leading county, so it's not like a toss-up county, but it's still a big county. It's like 800,000, 900,000 people. So it does matter a lot for politics in Pennsylvania. So Josh Shapiro runs statewide to hold the seat for Democrats, and he wins by about 5%. This was a solid showing because on the same ballot, Donald Trump won the state. So Shapiro outran Hillary Clinton by nearly 6 points, and it was a really impressive showing considering the fact that he was not an incumbent, was not really that well known statewide, and he still won a lot of these ancestral Democratic areas. He did very well in Lackawanna. He was able to win a lot of these counties around Scranton that are generally that were Democratic in the past and now more Republican. They're very Trumpy areas. So Shapiro did very well in those areas. In 2020, on the same ballot as Joe Biden, doing awful in ancestrally Democratic areas in Pennsylvania. Shapiro, first of all, Shapiro did incredibly well in the areas surrounding Pittsburgh. He won Allegheny County by 27%, which was a 7% overperformance of Joe Biden. He also came within 50. He only lost Westmoreland County by 16%. That's a county that Trump won by 25. So Shapiro outran Biden by 8 to 10% nearly everywhere in outer Pittsburgh in these working class ancestrally Democratic areas. He also was able to win Luzerne County, which is an ancestrally Democratic. It's a county that Obama won by 5, but that Trump won by like 17 both times. And he won Luzerne County, and he did incredibly well, and he won by 5% once again. So Josh Shapiro clearly knows what he's doing. He was able to win as a non-incumbent in 2016. He won as an incumbent in 2020. And this is, he won this AG race on the same ballot that Joe Biden only won Pennsylvania by about a point. That Stacey Garrity flipped the treasurer seat, and the Republicans also won the state auditor race in Pennsylvania. So Republicans actually did quite well in Pennsylvania in 2020, but Shapiro held on to his seat, and he was able to win. He won all the competitive congressional districts. He won Connor Lamb's seat. He won Matt Cartwright's seat. He won Susan Wild's seat. I think he was within a few points. I think he was within 2% in the 10th district, which is where Eugene DePasquale fell short to Scott Perry. So Josh Shapiro did very well in 2020, did very well in 2016. So he's a good candidate. You can say he's a bad candidate, but that's only because of what he posts on Twitter. And you guys, like the people who say Josh Shapiro is a bad candidate have only been paying attention to politics for 6 months, clearly, because he did very well in 2016, he did very well in 2020. And he was the dream recruit for Democrats in the governor's race. He was, the dynasty goal for Shapiro is that he goes from AG to governor to senator. For hopefully, if for Democrats, if Casey retires or if Fetterman loses this year or whatnot happens. But Josh Shapiro is the number one Democrat. Once Tom Wolf leaves, I believe Josh Shapiro behind Bob Casey with the number one Democrat in Pennsylvania politics, and he will be the future of the party in the state. So Democrats will do everything they can to help Josh Shapiro, to bolster him in this state. And clearly what they're doing is working, because in the polls we've seen, Shapiro is ahead of Mastriano. In every Pennsylvania governor poll he's been up. Most recent one had him up by 11%, so clearly he's doing something right. And ultimately, you can talk about Twitter and, he posted a cringy TikTok, oh my god, guys. But, it doesn't matter. Do you think that swing blue-collar voters in Westmoreland County or in Luzerne County, in Bucks County, and Lackawanna County are watching TikTok and saying, oh, I don't know, man. I don't know if I can vote for this guy because he did a cringy trend on TikTok? No. They aren't reading into the TikToks and the Twitter and Doug Mastriano posting memes about Josh Shapiro. No. They are hearing Josh Shapiro's ads, because remember, Josh Shapiro has $12.5 million more dollars in the bank than Doug Mastriano, so he can form his image before Mastriano can even get a word out. And they're hearing these things. They're hearing what Mastriano, they're not really hearing what Mastriano has to say. They're hearing what Shapiro has to say. They're probably going to break towards Shapiro. Some of them are going to vote for Doug Mastriano because they're angry at Joe Biden. I get that. Joe Biden's not exactly a happy camper in Pennsylvania right now. Although that poll showed Biden ahead of Trump by about a point statewide. So somehow Biden is still beating Trump in Pennsylvania. But it's fair to note that in that poll, Mastriano or Shapiro was 10% ahead of Biden. So unless you think that Biden would lose Pennsylvania by 10% if he ran for president today, then Shapiro's still favored, by the way, just to put that out there. He's running significantly ahead of Joe Biden. But, ultimately, candidate quality matters more than Biden unpopular, because you can talk about how Biden's unpopular. Yeah, he is not a popular dude right now. Not in Pennsylvania, not really anywhere, really. But what people forget is that the Democratic Party is a coalition, not a party. And a lot of progressive Democrats will be voting in this midterm, voting for the Democratic candidates down ballot, do not like Joe Biden. I don't really know how I feel about Joe Biden. I'm a Democrat. I'd vote for Josh Shapiro in a heartbeat in this race. I don't know if I approve or disapprove Joe Biden. I can go back and forth. I can think, well, maybe I approve, maybe I disapprove, whatnot, right? And there are a lot of Democrats who are less pro-Biden than I am, who just don't like the guy, but are going to vote Democrat and are going to do everything they can to help the Democrats in November. Think of how many pissed off Democrats there are because of the overturning of Roe v. Wade now. Josh Shapiro might have had a turnout problem before Roe v. Wade was overturned. Biden unpopular, no one likes the Democrats anymore, boo-hoo, no one's going to vote, right? Well, Roe v. Wade kind of fixed that for the Democrats, because now Their fundraising has gone through the roof since Roe v. Wade was overturned. We have seen nonstop momentum for them for the past 6 weeks. It hasn't really stopped yet. I kind of thought it would slow down by mid-July. But kind of just stagnate. It's almost August 1st. It's almost we're kind of heading towards the tail end of the summer, and the Democrats have not relinquished their momentum yet. Josh Shapiro is still leading Doug Mastriano in these polls. I know they're not great polls, but it's a pretty darn big lead. And in addition to that, the Democrats are out fundraising the GOP. They're gaining in the generic ballot, and this is all Joe Biden's fault because no one really likes Joe Biden anymore, right? Like, there are a ton of progressives who are angry as hell about this overturning of Roe v. Wade, who don't like Joe Biden, but are going to vote for the Democrats. And in Pennsylvania, there are plenty of Philadelphia residents who are very unhappy with the way Joe Biden's handled his job, who come out and vote, bring 8 friends to vote, and vote for Josh Shapiro. And that's the thing that matters here, right? Like, we can talk about Biden approval, but if you believe those polls, you got to believe the other polls. I mean, I hate to break it to you, but if you believe the Biden approval, down 19% polls, then you also got to believe the, Shapiro plus 11 polls, right? So that's just my 2 cents. I mean, prior to, I've been thinking about this for a while, really. I've been thinking about what the path is for Doug Mastriano, right? And like, you can make a path. Like, Mastriano can still absolutely win. I'm not saying this is like 1,000% chance Shapiro win. I'm just saying he's favored. But like, the thing with Doug Mastriano is that for him to win, I mean, realistically, like according to this blueprint poll, which I know isn't great, like I'm aware, but this is just what the poll says. I'm reading it out. Given the option between Shapiro and a moderate Republican, 1 in 5, so 20% of Shapiro voters say they would have either voted for the Republican or are unsure how they would have voted. 29% of undecided say they would have cast a ballot for a more moderate GOP candidate over Shapiro. So there are a lot of Shapiro voters who really, really are just don't like Joe Biden, probably just like Doug Mastriano too, who are voting for Josh Shapiro because the alternative is even worse. Politics is no longer a game of, I like this guy, I'm going to vote for him. It is, this guy is better than his opponent because this guy's opponent is crazy. And unfortunately for the Republicans, a lot of people seem to think Doug Mastriano is crazy, especially in the Philadelphia suburbs, which, by the way, is where Josh Shapiro was from and where he's going to probably base his campaign. It's, honestly worked out kind of well for the Pennsylvania Democrats because they can have Fetterman doing the Pittsburgh stuff because he's from Braddock, which is very close to Pittsburgh. They can have Shapiro doing the suburban stuff because he's more moderate. He's better for the suburbs, I think. And clearly, he knows what he's doing because these polls have shown a good result after good result for him. And you can talk about Mastriano having better tweets or how Shapiro isn't, because there was this expectation that Republicans would just literally just say, screw it, who cares about Mastriano, we're going to move on, right? And they've kind of done that, but people are ignoring it for whatever reason. And so ultimately what we're seeing here is a complete bucking of the trends here. And despite everything else that's going on, Pennsylvania seems to be going quite well for the Democrats. Josh Shapiro may not have good tweets, but clearly he's winning this race as of right now. I fully believe that if there were an election held today, Josh Shapiro would probably win. Probably by 3 or 4 points. I don't know if it'll be by that much in November. I currently have winning by just over 2%. So, it's still a fairly close race. But ultimately, Josh Shapiro really is just doing, I think, running a very solid campaign so far. And when you talk about the momentum being in Mastriano's favor, I just really don't know where that comes from other than online stuff that Pennsylvania voters probably don't notice. So I think so when you compare the places, I'll make a prediction here. When you compare the places that Shapiro did well to where Biden did well, pulling it up right now, Shapiro outran Biden essentially everywhere in Pennsylvania. The only places where Shapiro actually did not run Biden were in the northern parts of Bucks County, basically all of Chester County. Chester County was actually a county where Shapiro actually ran behind Joe Biden by 6%. And Shapiro, actually underran Biden by a fair bit in Delaware County as well. And he also didn't do too well compared to Biden in Lancaster. Shapiro actually didn't even crack 40 in Lancaster, where Biden did. So, in the Philly suburbs, Shapiro actually ran behind Biden, but again, it wasn't by that much. And then when you look at the areas where Shapiro did better than Biden, it was literally everyone in Luzerne County, Shapiro won Luzerne County by like I think 1,000 votes, and it was like a Trump plus 17 county or Trump plus 12 county. Shapiro won Lackawanna by 21%. It was a Biden plus 9 county, and Shapiro won Erie County by 7%, and it was a Biden plus 1 county. So, in like in the suburbs, Shapiro ran a little bit behind Biden. It didn't really matter though, but ultimately he ran ahead of him statewide, and he ran ahead of him in all the working class areas, and most of the in the city of Philadelphia itself, there were a lot of Shapiro Trump voters. Like, there are precincts in Philadelphia where Shapiro ran 10, 12 points ahead of Joe Biden. So, I was a little worried about Philadelphia earlier on for the Democrats, but like Shapiro seems to know what he's doing. I've heard rumors that the people on the ground in Pennsylvania really like what Shapiro's doing, and they think they'll be fine in Philadelphia and the state as a whole. And so I don't know. I mean, I think that like the little Mastriano anecdotes there in favor of him are just kind of like far and few, because like you can give me anecdotes about how Mastriano has better TV ads or whatnot. It's like, okay, it doesn't matter if there are 10 Shapiro ads for every one Mastriano ad, and it doesn't matter if like dude's getting no funding. So yeah, I guess to make a prediction now, I think Shapiro's going to by like 2.5, 2.4. I think Shapiro wins by double what Biden wins by. So that's Biden won by 1.2%. I think Shapiro wins by 2.4%. And I say that because Pennsylvania's electorate is going to have, so in midterms, the percent of the population with a college degree spikes, and the percent of the population that does not have a college degree goes down. And that is a mixed bag for Democrats, because they've kind of traded a lot of rural and working class voters for suburban voters. And so in Pennsylvania, Shapiro's going to do really well in the suburbs, because evidently a lot of moderates don't like Mastriano, and guess where the moderates are? Suburbs, ding, ding, ding. So the share of the electorate that's from Chester, Montgomery, Bucks, Lancaster, Delaware, whatnot, is going to spike, and that helps Shapiro, because these are all Democratic-leaning counties. And the population or the percentage of rural voters is going to go down by a little bit, and that hurts Mastriano, because the theory is that Mastriano is going to just have good rural turnout, and he'll do, he'll outrun even Trump in the rural areas. And like, yeah, sure, I think there'll be some rural counties where Mastriano does really well, but like, doesn't matter if turnout decreases. So, yeah, so I think Shapiro wins by like 2.5% statewide. I think he wins Erie County. I don't know if Fetterman wins it. I made a makeshift model and it put Fetterman ahead by about a point in Erie County. Had Shapiro winning it by 1.5. But I really have to work on that model, because it's far from perfect. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, I think Shapiro is going to win Erie County. I think he's going to win Allegheny by like 25, which Biden won it by 21, I think. So solid performance from Shapiro. I think he'll get within, I think he'll run ahead of Biden Westmoreland. And Westmoreland, for those of you who don't know, is the big Republican county right outside of Pittsburgh. So it's kind of the exurbs / the working class areas that are more Republican leaning. I think Shapiro does very well in center. Center was the county that actually ran behind Biden by a bit. It was like Biden plus 5 or 6. Actually, let me check right now. It was Biden plus 5. He won it by 3. I think he'll win. Center's trending left, and the reason the Democrats actually didn't do that well in center in 2020 was because center has a college. It's where the University of Pennsylvania. It's where Penn State is, and obviously with a lot of online learning happening across the country, a lot of Penn State students were not in Pennsylvania at the time. So that hurt Democratic turnout in those college towns. So I think that's going to be another plus for Shapiro. I think Shapiro's going to outrun Biden in Lackawanna. I think he wins it by like 15 or 20, somewhere in that range, but I think it's very solid. I don't think he'll win Luzerne. He won it narrowly in 2020. I think he loses it by single digits, though. I don't know how much. Like, I don't know too much about Luzerne's politics. I know it's a working class, right trending, ancestrally Democratic county, but it was Trump plus, I think, 14. Yeah, it was Trump plus 14 in 2020. Shapiro's probably going to outrun Trump, but I mean, Mastriano has some level of appeal to working class voters to his credit. So I think Shapiro loses it by like 7 or 8 maybe, but he does well there for some reason. I think he's going to do very well in the Lehigh Valley. I don't know if he wins Northampton County, because he only won it by 3% in 2020. So I don't know. I think he probably narrowly loses it, but it'll be very close either way. But I do think he wins Lehigh, and I think he holds on to Monroe very narrowly. And that's pretty good for Democrat. I think he does better in. I think there'll be a few places where he actually outruns his 5-point win in 2020. So I think he does better in Chester because Chester's a left-running suburban county where he actually ran behind Biden. I think Mastriano is the worst candidate the GOP could have run for Chester County. So I think I think he wins Chester County by kind of the same margin Joe Biden won it by maybe a little more. I think he does better than Joe Biden in Montgomery County. He won it by 27 in 2020. Joe Biden won Montgomery County by 26. So he was the county commissioner. He's from there, so I think he'll probably do a little bit. I think he wins about like maybe 30 this time because Shapiro's against such a bad candidate because Mastriano's against such a bad candidate for the suburbs. I think he wins Bucks County. He won it by 5 in 2020. Biden won it by 4. I think he wins it by 3 or 4. So maybe a little bit less than he did in 2020. But again, he won by 5% statewide in 2020. So he has a lot of room to fall and still win. So yeah, and then finally, he did better than Biden in Philadelphia. He won it with 81% of the vote. Biden won it with 81% of the vote, but Trump got 2% more of the vote than Shapiro's opponent. So the county was 2% better for Shapiro than it was for Biden. I think Shapiro's going to match his 20 margin in Philadelphia essentially, and I think he'll get fairly good turnout. I worry about Philadelphia turnout for Fetterman because I think that there are going to be some black voters who. Because I think that Fetterman's not a great candidate for Philadelphia. But, I don't know. I'm thinking about it because I think that Roe being overturned really gives Democrats an auto turnout boost in cities like Philadelphia. They're so socially liberal. So, I don't know. But I think that Mastriano is going to lose this race for now. I don't really have, a ton of, people are having it as, likely borderline safe Democratic. I don't want to say that. It's still Pennsylvania. It's still a fairly it's still a very competitive state. So I'm just going to say Shapiro's the favorite for now. I don't know how long I'll hold that opinion. I'll probably hold till election day. I still maintain that Shapiro Oz is the most likely outcome we're going to get. But to be honest, the people who are saying that a Mastriano Fetterman outcome is most likely, I just think are reading too much into vibes and polls. And quite frankly, Shapiro is clearly the better candidate in my eyes. So yeah, that's it for this podcast. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like on YouTube if you're watching on YouTube. Subscribe if you're on YouTube. You can go follow me on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. Share it with a friend. And if you're a Democrat or a Shapiro supporter, welcome to the club, first of all. W if you support Josh Shapiro, because I support Josh Shapiro too. And I am terrified of a Doug Mastriano governorship. But yeah, if you're a Democrat, I hope this calm you down. If you're a Republican, hopefully we can have a rational discussion if you want to yell at me on Twitter. But rational discussions on Twitter are an oxymoron, so that's unlikely. But yes, thanks so much for listening. And I'll see you all in the next episode. Thank you very much. Bye.